You're listening to Overwatch Contenders Daily, your path to daily news, scores, and insights into the Overwatch League stars of tomorrow. Here's your host, LemonKiwi.
Hey Overwatch fans, hope the Monday's going awesome and the week is not too painful. This is Overwatch Contenders Daily and I'm your host LemonKiwi. Today's guest is an awesome one. It's his third time on the show and he always has something new and awesome to talk about. His first time was with Toronto Esports. His second time I brought him on for Team Canada, and now he's transitioned onto the Mayhem Academy coaching lineup, and that's Renanthera. It's probably a familiar name to you. And Mayhem Academy have gone through a few changes. Mainly, they just picked up main tank Alined. I'm interested to know about Hagopeun, how he transitioned from the London Spitfire to a Contenders team, and other fun topics. But before we get into my interview with Renanthera, let's get into some Contenders news. So, first off, in North America, last night's leftovers have transferred DPS player Track to the young and beautiful roster who are in EU Contenders. And LNL mainly start in Layer and Sugar Free, so this was a nice gesture for them to let him start for another roster. In EU news, main tank player Colsty, who was on That's a Disband before they disbanded, has joined Bazooka Puppies' main lineup. And finally in Pacific news, Mega Esports have acquired a new head coach, and his name is Spinda. And this guy used to be a support player for Serenity in Australian Contenders last season. And that's all the roster moves that you've missed since the previous week. Now let's get into my interview with Renanthera about the new Mayhem Academy changes. And I'm joined here with Ronald Renanthera Lee, former coach of Toronto Esports, and now you've transitioned to Mayhem Academy as their coach. And I just want to say congratulations, it's so overdue. I know you've had a little bit of time with them, but I'm going to start with how you're doing.
I'm doing well. We're smack dab in Contenders, so always busy. I'm actually supposed to go get my hair dyed pink because...
What? Did you lose a bet?
I was just really confident in our first game. I was like, oh, we're ready to go. We're going to start, 1-0, and then we lost to Gladiators. So I'm going to dye my hair pink as a...
That's like a hockey thing too, right? Like I remember like a whole bunch of hockey people would dye their hair blonde in playoffs for some kind of good luck. Or if you lose a bet.
Yeah, like I'm not doing it for the luck. I'm doing it because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. But hopefully it's a good reminder of why you should play better in these in the official games.
Right. But I was just really surprised to see you leave Toronto Esports. I think everybody was. Like, you guys had a really good run and a lot of success there. So what drove you to leave Toronto Esports, and how has your experience been on Mayhem Academy?
Well, first of all, leaving Toronto Esports was a very difficult decision. I want to say, first of all, that despite our second place title, I still hold it firm in my heart that given a few tweaks and adjustment, the Toronto Esports roster had the potential to win it all in Season 1. I still think the players on that roster are very skilled and very raw, and will go a long way with the proper guidance and attitude. So leaving that really talented team with a couple of people that I really do enjoy spending time with was very difficult. Even after leaving the team, I still consider many of them my good friends and colleagues, obviously, and I would love to work with them in the future. But after our defeat to Fusion University, I really was at a crossroads. I felt like a large part of the defeat was my fault, and I ought to have better equipped them for the match. Truth be told, I think the organization kind of severely underestimated the amount of manpower it takes to create and mold a winning team. I know, talking to Mineral, head coach of the Overwatch League team, how much he would sympathize, because when the stakes are so high and you're really competing at a high level and you have to be prepared for every single game that happens every single week, it takes a lot of work, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And me working at Toronto Esports, although we did have like a few other people on staff, we still found ourselves kind of low on hands. I remember when TO played Fusion Uni in the finals, they actually rallied all their Overwatch League staff. Like Kirby was there, their head coach, and like the rest of their staff as well was like standing behind the Contenders players, and they had such a robust, management team behind them, behind the Contenders team, and it was kind of like an eye-opening moment that we really were like the underdogs coming in. TO, although they are also an academy team, didn't have that same, level of familiarity with Boston Uprising, being partners first, and I think a little less close-knit than I guess the Fusion team was. So yeah, it just kind of opened my eyes that I want a team more like that. I want to be in a team that kind of is more in line with, I guess, my expectations as a coach. Like I wanted to be with an org that has the tools available, and kind of share that perspective. That close-knit family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, my ideals and philosophies didn't align with the more practical restraints that come with budgeting and finances and such, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a combination of my personal philosophy, a little bit of my feelings of inadequacy of being unable to take first, but also maybe the misalignment with what I expected from the organization and the reality of the situation. But from that, I pushed myself to kind of be brave and seek other opportunities. And, for anyone that wants to be the best, second is pretty much the same as last. If you're not first, then it's not the same, So coming in second, I wasn't like, oh, this is great, I want to stay in this team and be second forever. I wanted to kind of seek a team that had the potential to be first, and kind of resonated more with me as a person.
Right, and I was so worried when he left. I was like, man, he's got to be going to Overwatch League, because that's kind of like when Arrow left Fusion. I was like, what is happening? The top two NA coaches just left their teams. So I was like, okay, Arrow went to Dallas, and I was like, where are you going? And you didn't leak the intel yet, and then you ended up on Mayhem. But that means you're working a lot closer. Is Mayhem Academy like working a lot closer with the Florida Mayhem?
Yeah, we obviously the Florida Mayhem are off right now, not being in playoffs and all. But we work very closely with the coaches, Mineral and Ryder, and they have been such pleasures to work with. They're so knowledgeable, and despite a lot of public opinion and stuff, these guys really do know what they're talking about. I've learned so much in my short time here, and it just when I was working with Boston, I still learn a lot from these guys, but again, the philosophies are just different, right? That they're when you're talking to all these coaches, there are multiple ways to find success, and it's very interesting, I think, to see the different perspectives and insights these guys offer, and their various ways to find success. So, at Mayhem, everyone lives in the same complex. So we're all very close to each other. We see each other all the time. We have lunch together. We have dinner together. The Overwatch League players are in Florida now, but they were here too. We got to meet with them and talk to them, and
so cool.
The players learned a lot. Yeah, it's really, really awesome. I think a couple other Overwatch League teams also have similar setups. I believe New York does, and maybe Glads as well, or Philly. But yeah, we're really trying to make it so the Contenders teams feel as close as possible to Overwatch League teams.
And it's been great for you to kind of put your hands in both cookie bowls of working with Overwatch League talent, maybe growing yourself there, because like you're from Toronto and you got to move out of Canada to kind of experience the real esports life. And me coming from Canada, same thing. It's like there's not a ton going on. At least you were in Toronto, so that was like booming for esports. But
yeah, it's like a tiny New York.
Right? Yeah, and it's really only Toronto and Vancouver that has some esports stuff going on. Montreal is actually pretty good for some stuff, and you got to leave there, and that's really awesome. A cool opportunity to work with the Overwatch League talent. And now, ever since you became the new coach, you guys have announced the acquirement of new main tank Alined. So I didn't really know a ton about this guy. Apparently he's got a lot of success in TESPA. So what's the story, and how does he fit with your team?
Okay, well, Aligned's name is Daniel Lee. And yeah, he used to play for the TCS, the TESPA Collegiate Series for Overwatch. For those that are probably unfamiliar with it, I know Collegiate sometimes gets like the side eye when we're talking about, I guess, like maybe the amateur scene. But at the upper echelons of collegiate play, the teams are actually rather competitive. I know I myself come from a collegiate background. I played for the University of Toronto. We were runner-up for the inaugural season, and then we placed third/fourth for the second season. And I actually lost to Alined twice.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he played for the University of California, Berkeley, and they were the reigning champs 2 years running under his leadership and his belt. So me and Danielle have a kind of obscure and interesting history, but that's where I know him from.
So playing
it's
against
interesting.
him and
Yeah, playing against him and kind of like seeing each other across the hall in the practice rooms and being like, oh, we're gonna duke it out. I'm gonna smoke you and all those sort of things. But yeah, we're rather close now. He did not play main tank for collegiate. He was actually a flex player. He played flex DPS and flex tank. And Aligned is just, he's an oddball. It's hard to talk about Aligned like you do any other player because it doesn't feel like he has a set role. He has kind of like an odd past. He's not even on social media, so it's really hard to kind of like learn about him at all. He's a rather private and quiet person. So yeah, he played on collegiate, but he also played in the tier 2 scene under Citizen 7. I think that's a team with like Dogman.
oh, okay.
That was a while back, but he has been on a few tier 2 teams and even rung for a couple of like professional teams. Like he's that good. And the only reason he's declined offers is because he is pursuing an education at the same time.
Yeah.
So, you know, trying to go pro is very demanding, obviously, and some orgs would tell you like, you know, it's you join us, you got to quit school or
What? They tell you to quit? I thought they try to help balance that.
Yeah, it's just difficult. I mean, I was in the same kind of position when I was working with Boston and Toronto Esports. Like Huck was creating Boston Uprising. He wanted to pick up a few coaches and analysts, and I was on that list, but I was in my last year of university and I couldn't pursue it. And Aligned is someone that's very much in the same boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, you have your dreams to pursue of being pro, and you have kind of the more realistic elements of like, okay, what if I'm not cut out for it, or what if this doesn't work out for me? What if the scene dies? It's just a large gamble.
It's scary. It's a volatile sort of situation. So
yeah, of course.
he was kind of like a flex and an off tank. So did you ask him to play main tank, or was he interested in that role, or what was his transition to that role?
So Align plays literally everything except for maybe Pharah.
Oh.
Like he plays every hero in the game to a level anywhere between 4,400 and like 4,600 on the ladder right now. The guy is absolutely insane. He's so I don't want to use the word talent, but he's a grinder. He's learned every hero inside out. He wakes up, plays the game, goes to school, comes back, plays the game, skips a class, plays the game.
Don't encourage that one though.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. Maybe his profs would listen on this interview and be like, Aligned.
Oh, well, F.
But yeah, I knew he was talented. I knew he was coachable and personable, and that he would be a good fit for the team. He also is of Korean heritage, so he speaks a little bit of Korean, which is always useful in the esports scene, obviously. So our other main tank, Milky Man, is in Europe and has to play in super high ping. It just makes it very, very difficult for both the schedule and our schedule, and just obviously playing the game with high ping.
And
so Aligned was, yeah, and time zones, those are the worst. Yeah. But Aligned lives in California, so same ping. He's not very far away. He speaks English and Korean, and he plays everything. So I was like, you know what? All the really awesome main tanks are already in OWL, and it's very difficult to find, I think, super amazing main tanks. It's probably the hardest role to actually find right now, I think. So
right, yeah. I think
inspiring,
it's super in demand.
Yeah, very, very in demand. So instead of finding one, we thought, well, maybe we could create one. We just had to find someone that, you know, was willing to be coached, willing to take constructive criticism, had a good personality, right? Had good mental fortitude, had strong fundamentals and mechanics, and Aligned checked every single box for us. So we gave him a shot, and he excelled in every area. I really did think he was. We're very lucky to have found him, and moving forward, I hope he gets more recognition and kind of makes more of a name for himself, despite his private, you know, social media-less life.
Well, you got him on Twitter now, right? So at least he'll
Yeah, we
start
forced
building
him to. He was like, "No, please, I don't want to do it." And we're like, "Man, it's part of the contract."
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was part of the contract too.
No, he has to have a following. We're trying to build a brand, obviously.
Right, that makes total sense business wise. But speaking of Korean, you've also dug deep. So you dug deep in TESPA for this guy, and you've now dug into the London Spitfire to find Hagopeun, which is kind of surprising to everyone in Contenders that our Overwatch League players are starting to trickle back into Contenders. So kind of like the reverse path to pro. And you were telling me that actually Hagopeun does live with you guys. So you said Alined speaks a bit of Korean, but mostly English. So does Hagopeun have a language barrier issues with the team, and how is he integrating going from Overwatch League to Contenders?
So Hagopeun's actually just right outside in our practice room. If you hear any screaming, it's always him because he is so loud. Yeah, I don't know if I would say the language barrier is super jarring. There's definitely one that exists, but we're whittling away at it every day. I think the more and more time we spend with Hagopeun, the better his English is getting. And not just his English, but also we're seeing more of his personality shine through. We're kind of breaking down the culture difference because this is the first Western team he's been on. So he's getting to know more of like the intricacies of Western culture versus Korean culture, and likewise on the flip end, a lot of our guys are starting to understand more of how to approach him and talk to him, especially someone with his level of prestige. Definitely at first there was a little bit of a gap, but now the team is very, very close-knit. He's been cracking jokes and giving advice, and they gossip like a couple of old ladies. So it's really nice to see. Yeah.
That's so awesome to see, like, Overwatch League talent now coming back to Contenders and kind of building that scene. It's like helping your brands, and it's helping them get back on the right horse, because Spitfire was like so great and now they're okay. And I'm hoping that Alined.
Playoffs.
Oh yeah, that is true. Well, although it wasn't as predicted as we would have thought, but they are doing at least well now in the playoffs, although the season was. But Hagopeun now is going to be able to contribute a lot to your team, along with Alined and all these pickups that you guys have done recently. So, but your next match is against an old rival. You got Fusion University, and they're looking really scary this season, kind of like last season, still in a championship level type of talent. So you've spent your time probably studying them from Toronto Esports and just looking at them. So is there any apparent weaknesses to you in Fusion that you're looking to exploit? And like, how confident are you coming with Mayhem Academy against them?
That's an interesting question. I think me coming into Mayhem Academy, we focused more on building ourselves up, working on our fundamentals, our communication, our teamwork, rather than studying other teams as much. That's not to say we don't scout them, that we look into what they're doing and kind of try to break them down a little bit. But Fusion Uni had an entire season together, and this new Mayhem Academy roster didn't. I think our approach going into this very important game is not to kind of put all our eggs in one basket and hope the scouting works out and play to counter them, but bring ourselves as quickly as possible to their level and excel to be even better than them. I think, especially playing them so early, you have less footage to go off of, and with a week between games, I've learned even from last season that things can change very quickly, and these things aren't always reliable. So I'm not particularly afraid of Fusion Uni. I think they're very good, but I don't think they're untouchable, and neither do I even think they're as good as last season. I think this season, if I were to power rank the Contenders teams, I would think the top 3 spots are almost interchangeable, at least going off of scrim results on the day. I think we have 5 or 6 teams that are very, very good, and some of them have off days and some of them are inconsistent, but if they worked on that issue moving into maybe the next 3 or 4 weeks, Fusion Uni could very easily be dethroned even before making it to playoffs.
Well, I remember just Fusion University's dive was just one of the best in Contenders, and then you saw them go against British Hurricane against the Quad Tank, and that was like
our NA pride.
Yeah, that NA pride just crushed there. But it was like you saw the real cracks in the armor of Fusion University, and that's still kind of a different meta with Sombra, quad tank, and now you got Brigitte and still a tank meta coming in where maybe they are touchable. That sounds weird, but they're not untouchable. I guess that makes more sense. And really looking forward to your match, especially when, you know, you got that sort of at least your personal rivalry of, oh, they took our championship. But you're coming in with a lot more resources, like from what you said, with Mayhem Academy working with the Overwatch League coaches and resources and stuff like that. And what I've been kind of seeing on my timeline, actually, manager of last night's Leftovers, Kate Mitchell, brought up kind of an interesting statistic that open division teams or trials or non-academy teams are 0-17 versus academy teams from this season and last season. From your perspective, why are non-academy teams such at a disadvantage?
There's a lot that goes into that. I mean, just to answer some initial questions that probably spring into anyone's mind right away. Do academy teams have more coaching resources? Yes, they do. Do, you know, academy teams have better players because they can pay more? Yes, they do. You know, do better players want to be on academy teams because then they have better chances of being in the Overwatch League? Yeah, obviously. Does, you know, do academy teams have more scrimming discipline because of their associations with the league team? Yeah, obviously. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think probably the biggest difference maker, at least to me, is probably just the gulf in professionalism. I think there's a big gap between the way trials teams are run and the way academy teams are run, from the top down. Any academy team that knows what they're doing will be trying their best to instill a sense of professionalism, you know, into their players, right? From what I know, every competitive academy team are pushing for, you know, healthier lifestyles. They're pushing for more healthy and rigid schedules for not just their players but even their staff. You know, they're taking into account things like physical health, mental health, and setting positive examples for a lot of these very youthful players. And additionally, you know, the purpose of academy teams is to eventually make it so their contenders players either make it into the Overwatch League and join their teams, or are good enough that, you know, they can be sold to an existing team or even an expansion team, right? So with that in mind, I think any organization that wants to be successful and win is going to take these tournaments way more seriously than trials teams do, because I think there's more at stake, right? You have an investment to pay off, you have kind of a reputation to maintain, and you know, sponsors to impress. I don't think trials players are necessarily less talented or less driven, but maybe that's the case for a small handful of players. But I think the largest difference is the gap in team culture and atmosphere and a sense of urgency, right? The players that have joined Mayhem Academy know very well what a drastic difference it is to work with Mineral and Ryder. You know, there's this massive gulf that trials teams will struggle to bridge with academy teams even before you step into King's Row, right? This happens way before you get into any map. It's unfortunate, but you know, it's just kind of the reality of the situation. I think that's why you see a lot of OWL teams whip out innovative, maybe even cheesy compositions, like famously the 3-3 or the GOATS comp, right? To kind of get a leg up and kind of make a name for themselves. Like, these are the things they have to do to kind of try and bridge that gap. But it's very, very difficult to play, I think, standard meta against these teams, because not only are they better equipped in game, but they're more equipped out of game. They have a different mindset. You know, they have better resources all around. It's very, very hard.
I think you hit the nail on the head of every single one of those points. Like, you can pay the players more. You got more resources coaching wise from Overwatch League coming in, or Overwatch League coaches coming in, and discipline, everything. There's just an infrastructure with academy teams, and it's not that I don't think trials teams can do it. It's just, I guess, all the how do I say, the great talent are in Overwatch League, are in these academy teams, and they have all the best players and the best coaches for a reason. And it's tough. Like, I've talked a lot to Kate about this and how, like, her team is just grinding so hard, hours and hours, trying to play in pit, trying to play in beat, and trying to do all this stuff of grinding and scrimming to be at that academy level. But when you can't pay your coaches, you can't pay your managers, you can't pay your players, they're going to have outside commitments, and that's going to get in the way of fully committing to the team.
Yeah. I mean, I was there. Almost everyone I know that's like at this point of their lives, where they're in the Overwatch League or on an academy team, they've been there. We all know very well how difficult it is, and it's rather unfortunate that kind of not much more care is kind of shown their way to kind of help bridge this gap, because ultimately, Overwatch League and the success of Overwatch Esports in general relies on these upcoming talents, right? The Contenders is the breeding ground for talent that eventually makes it into Overwatch League, and academy teams are, trying to farm players as much as possible, but it's difficult for us to find players that will be motivated and hard to scout and find future talent if these trials teams burn out, right? They realize it's not worth the investment of their time, or if it's too risky for their futures. So I hope something is done from maybe Blizzard's end to kind of build a better foundation for these players. It's really unfortunate that they make it all the way through trials. They make it through open. And they're really hyped up, like goes super hyped up, and you see them fall flat because of so many things out of their control, and it's a little disheartening.
Well, at least a positive to the story or the guinea pig scenario is that Envision had this whole thing of they don't feel taken care of as a non-academy team, and they almost dropped out of Contenders, and then here comes Team Envy picking up the Envision roster. Yeah. So it's almost like, can we test out that theory of what can a non-academy team become academy level in air quotes with Team Envy taking this roster, that raw talent, and injecting all their resources and see if they can be at that level. It's probably too early to tell, but I'm so excited to see what Envision can do now that they have the resources they wanted so bad.
I mean, playing with them and scrimming with them, I think they're very, very good. I don't think Team Envy now are incapable of playing with all the other academy teams whatsoever. They are very good. And I think they are improving, again, with this influx of resources, like you said. The question is now, I think, at least a big question for me is, now that you joined the academy team and the standards are different, do you keep all of your, all of Envision's players? Like, will we be seeing more shifts as maybe demands change and expectations change? I don't know. But they are a very interesting case study of, I think, what could happen.
It is a case study. That is super exciting. I will be bringing on McGravy actually later on when he's done moving to talk about that sort of transition of how it was from non-academy to academy. What are those sort of guidelines that you're now following and what kind of resources he's getting? But that'll be for an interview that I hope you'll get to watch too. But to go back on your point, and very excited to see what Alined and Hagopeun and yourself can shape Mayhem Academy into, I guess, last season they were like mid-range, and now you've got so much more stuff coming in. I hope you guys can really turn out to be a championship team.
Thank you. I mean, this team is incredible. I think anyone sleeping on Mayhem Academy is going to very much regret it. I know the Overwatch League team has had a very shaky start, and I know their academy team had an equally shaky of a start. But I can tell you right now, with my insider knowledge, Mayhem Academy are going to be really freaking good coming into Season 2.
Well, I wish you guys all the best of luck. I'll be keeping my eyes on Mayhem Academy. Hope you guys at home will too, as their next match will be against Fusion University. And that'll be a good one. Make sure you guys check that out. That will be the end of my interview. But thank you so much, Renanthera, for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure every single time.
All right, guys, this was Overwatch Contenders Daily. I'm LemonKiwi. That was Renanthera. We're going to see you guys on Wednesday.
You're listening to Overwatch Contenders Daily, your path to daily news, scores, and insights into the Overwatch League stars of tomorrow. Here's your host, LemonKiwi.